Welcoming to this Existential Hope special of our podcast. You're here because you were in the winning team of our Transformative AI Institutions Hackathon. You guys proposed the Flourishing Foundation. So I'll just start with asking you if you could briefly introduce yourself and why you're doing this work, and also tell us a little bit about what the proposal was that you guys won with.
Thank you for having me, Beatrice, and the Foresight team. And I've been always such a joy and honor to be involved in the Foresight community for the past 2 years. One of the first events I went to was the very first XHope workshop last year. So that really piqued my interest in connecting more with this community over the past 2 years. So yeah, very excited to talk about this topic. My background, it's pretty transdisciplinary. I would say my first training was in biology and neuroscience. I thought I was going to have a pretty standard career practicing medicine, like most of the rest of my family, or going to education, higher ed. But however, I pivoted quite a bit from that. My first training was in biology and economics. And looking back, both of them are very much the study of living systems. And that's been something that's a through line of my career. I'm very interested in us as living systems and other species around us in nature. And the question is, how come our economic and social systems often do not quite reflect that reality, and how we can work towards a future where our economy supports our well-being, it's also equally alive and supports our vitality instead of extracting from it. So that's been the topic, looking back, connecting the dots, that's really been central to what led me here. And in between, I also have, for the past decade or so, I've been very much in the human-centered design, human-computer interaction space. I've done a master's in that, and I'm really curious about human-machines relationship, just in general. And fast forward 10 years now, where this question is so alive because transformative technology like AI, neurotech, spatial computing, and all of that is here now. It's happening now. So again, it elevates the question of how can we ensure that technology help us as humans and our planet really truly flourish collaborative and positive way, rather than forming an adversarial relationship where these technology pose risks to our very existence. So that's the core of existential questioning that brought us to the formation of this project. And the project actually started as a tiny little discussion group last March 2023, when generative AI and other things have come into the scene. And I was working for an industry innovation design lab, working on wearables and neurotech related projects. And a group of us in academia and industry experts got together and felt concerned about what's happening. So this little study group has since grown into quite a community. And by end of last year, so by the time I went to the XHope workshop in February, we were pretty determined to start finding support and start building community and ecosystem. So I have to say, I came to the workshop thinking about the topic. I was not actually aware that it was a competition, and it was great that we were able to present this set of ideas and found a lot of resonance and validation from folks that are thinking the same. And I want to say that there's so many brilliant people working on the very hard problem of AI human alignment, and so supportive of that. And I'm always in awe of whenever I read about the newest in the field. And I think we're approaching this problem we think it's equally important to consider AI human alignment as it is to consider human alignment. That means both alignment to ourselves internally, be aware of our intents and our desires and our embodied values, and to connect to each other, and also to align with nature's cycles and intents. So when we talk about better relationship with machines that embody our aligned intent. So I see those two pieces of work, AI alignment and human alignment, to be very hand in hand. And it's harder, of course, to address the human alignment problem sometimes, given that we're living in a very polarized society, and we have a big meaning crisis, right? In 2019 survey showed, 80% of people that surveyed in the UK said their life had no meaning. And the body research and stats related to meaning crisis is so abundant. So the point I'm getting at is we're really intent on focusing on the human alignment problem, and that's what led to us creating this. I can stop there, and there's a lot more to say about each of these topics, but yeah, so that's the why of what we're doing this.
Yeah, thank you so much. And do you want to expand a bit on what the proposal was? Because I know you proposed like these having consumer technologies promote human and planetary well-being more, having new norms and practices, and you also mentioned this like a new sort of ecosystem around it.
Yeah.
So I'd be very interested to hear more, about the idea that you proposed.
Yeah, sounds great. So I think central to what we're trying to solve is how might we transition towards a well-being economy where technology support human flourishing rather than extracting vitality from us and nature, right? So that's the foundation of, if we can solve that, I think we can have a lot of existential hope around where we're going. And so one of the interesting things is GDP has gone up quite a bit in developed countries. We have more material abundance than ever, but our wellness has stagnated. Physical wellness, yes, physical fitness have gone up, but social, emotional, spiritual wellness are at risk. And that's feeding back to really cap how well we can be physically as well. And we have so much body research to show that the mind-body connection and all that. So we're really wondering how is the success of technology, consumer technology measured, and whether that is really contributing to our wellness. Right. I joke about measuring GDP as an outcome for economic wellness of a nation is like counting lines of code to say the quality of software. And we're doing that the same for consumer tech. For example, the most prominent success metric for a lot of the software that we're using, especially social media, is engagement. Engagement doesn't necessarily lead to wellness. Oftentimes it leads to addiction. And that is not that's not a path towards being socially, emotionally. And we've seen this as Instagram usage have gone up, and teenage suicide have also gone up in almost parallel. And we've seen recent congressional hearings. There's a lot of people are trying to address how have we been creating technology and how that's negatively impacted our wellness. And so we think the lever for this change of this very wicked problem with a lot of moving parts, one lever of change could be changing how we measure success. And from there, we can use the same principles to move towards more a intentional, conscious, and nurturing way of creating the next generation of technology that is aligned to our wellness. But we need to be able to measure that, right? There's such a body of research out there on how we measure wellness, what does it mean, behavioral health, and all of that. We are interested in doing translational research on this and also operationalize that into the products and services that we're incubating and building as social proof that this is possible, that we're able to transition towards a more holistic understanding of success when it comes to consumer technology, whether it's software, hardware, or a combination of those. So that's a hope, that's a lever of change we're trying to pull on. There's a lot to be learned from ancient wisdom and modern science alike. We want to integrate those into our work and not pretend that we're starting from fresh, because there has been a lot that's known. And we think there's a gap to be closed before really great research, especially academic research, and what's out there in the field in terms of goods and services created that realistically impact people. We want to help close that gap by giving support to a lot of the ideas that would usually die in the valley of death, right? Between where our research ends and where products and services creation begins. So we want to be creating an institution in between to support that.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a very popular proposal at the workshop. And yeah, it was great to see you guys get the trophy. But it would be super interesting. I know that it's very early stage and very explorative still. It would be very interesting to hear, though, like, what have you been exploring so far? Have you gained any insights yet into what you think you will be focusing on, or what we can do actually to make this transition happen? Do you have ideas for how we could make social media better, for example?
Yeah, that not specifically yet, but we are very interested in, I think in that case, it's easier to start with something new than try to fix something old. But we are very much, there's a range of development that we've been really excited to share in terms of progress. we're taking a very collaborative, emergent, and nurturing attitude towards building this new system, because we're not agents that maximize our utility as our old economic system assumed us to be, but we're altruistic, compassionate humans that are also messy. And so we're embodying that into our everyday work. What we have been doing well and what's really alive so far are three things. One is this translational research piece on behavioral health. We've partnered with some behavioral scientists on behavioral health certification and labeling project that they started during the pandemic. The approach we're taking is to looking at behavioral health similar to medical health in terms like creating behavioral health trials. So we can create a nutritional label around if something meets all the dimensions of behavioral health and likely how it's going to impact that. So consumers are informed on that. And then we can also put products through trials in order to understand whether they actually meet those goals, much like medical trials. We should have it as such. That's why we were thinking about it. So we're designing this into a more dynamic system that can be used by consumers to inform their purchase, that can be used by product makers and designers to inform their design of products and services, and ultimately also have information for policymakers to be able to regulate this industry. So we very much want to approach our behavioral and social health in relation to consumer technology in that lens, in a similar lens as how we treat our physical health, if that makes sense. So that's a road with exploration we've been on, and there's a lot of interesting details to share. And we are taking a very experimental approach towards this. We're experimenting what would work. And so that's a track on the Wellness Index project. I can dive a lot deeper into that. And this is in relationship to a group that's led by Dr. Ting Jiang, who used to be a behavior researcher at Duke, and now is running an innovation lab in Thailand, very similar to us. So we've been making progress on that together. And the second part, besides translational research, is product incubation. We've also been doing really well on that. Since February, our Tuesday group has attracted anywhere between 1 to 3 speakers per week that are really excited about using a conscious tech and a flourishing lens to make the next generation product. So we have everything from AI for senior wellness to better connect seniors to their family and through storytelling to body as interface. How do we using our heart rate and our brain waves to build connection through interactive media arts to other projects that related to headsets that treats ADHD. We've had a gamut of products that are either internally incubated by us or from folks that are from outside of our ecosystem, such as from UK or Australia, that have landed in the ecosystem that we've been supporting. So product incubation, translational research. Besides that, we have also been thinking about a more concerted offering related to education on systems and human-centered design as ways to help younger entrepreneurs and innovators, not just entrepreneurs, find alignment in their work. We call it the founder opportunity fit, right? Finding like the problem that you want to solve and finding how to solve that problem from a systems lens. So it's not just what I want to solve, but also what kind of system lever we can pull on. So that's something that we're thinking about making an offering to, and also running experiments right now in Minnesota. So we have a few different pieces together. So far, what we find where our talents and passion lie is really related to the research piece, product incubation, innovator coaching and support as individuals and humans, and also education advocacy. So we want to lean into those 4 things and see how do we do each one of those better? And maybe things will fall in and fall out of those buckets, but that's what we've been doing.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Are you able to say anything about the experiment in Minnesota, or is it?
Oh yeah, all of it is open. Oh, I just mean the Minnesota piece. So right now we're thinking, since the workshop where we presented this ideal vision of under Flourishing Foundation, we would have multiple communities that's bind together by shared values and research, such as the Wellness Index piece. And it's actually organically happening. So Lauren, who is on the team with me, have been running a group called Complexity and Coffee in Minnesota. And this is middle America, outside the tech bubble. And people are also wrestling with similar questions of meaning crisis, of trying to understand the system. And why is that we're feeling the weight of an economic system that's extractionary as individuals. And so that conversation have been going really well as meetup group. So we're thinking of turning that into more of a educational offering that can be replicated in different places. So people are becoming more aware of the need for new institution, the need for us to move towards a wellness economy from a ground up, bottoms up way by embodying the values of being human, having authentic, aligned expression, etc. So that experiment is really interesting, and that community, right? So here in San Francisco is the core conscious tech collective community that we've been nurturing that's going really well. And there's another one called Behavioral Tech Collective down in Thailand, led by Dr. Jing Ting by Ting Zhang, that's her name. And so the three communities are working together to basically run a series of experiments from different angles. So Lauren's group is more using a systems lens to look at how do we move towards wellness economy. We're looking at consumer tech, conscious creation, especially neurotech. There's quite a lot of movement in that, and that's my background. And then down in Thailand, it's much more behavioral science. How do we turn behavioral science insights we treat it with the same rigor as we do with biology and hard science, and turn that, but with a human bent, and turn that into products and services and communities that can really promote behavioral health. So I think that's where we are at. It would be interesting. There could be other communities that might want to join us. There's inbound requests from, for example, folks down in Prospera and about what they're doing up there. So I'm down there and we're connecting on what that might look like and learning about each other's offerings to see if there's any value alignment. Anyway, so it's interesting that we're becoming this, what I call like a network of living systems labs. We're all looking at living systems, solving human wellness from a living system lens in different ways, if that makes sense. And we'll see where we go. It seems very exciting and alive.
Yeah, that's nice to hear that you're already going on that. I was curious to hear, do you think there's anyone else doing interesting stuff in this space of like conscious tech right now? Is there anyone else that you're like excited about their work?
Yeah, I'm sure there is. We're really excited about, and yeah, there's definitely no delusion that we're the only group doing it. And also I want to stress that this is one approach. In order to move towards a wellness-based economy, there's so many institutions that need to get created, so many things that need to change. For example, politically, like Center for Humane Tech, I know they're moving towards Daniel mentioned that they're moving towards more of a mapping the trailheads of what everyone is doing, like a coordinated approach position is that what they're doing. I'm really excited about their leadership because they do such great job in advocacy and in political advocacy, especially connecting with policymakers. That is really complementary. That's not something that, and they've been doing this for 10 years. So that's not something that, we're equipped to do or passionate about or skilled at in terms of interfacing with policymakers. Our audience is mostly consumers and innovators, right? That innovators being first and also go on to impact consumers. So really excited about that potential collaboration. Also very excited about the Compassion 2.0 folks. Recently went to their conference. That's how Dr. Ting Zhang and I met, and many other researchers and product makers. Through that network, we have almost identical shared values and very similar shared vision. And they are doing a fantastic job at gathering really great researchers in the well-being and flourishing space, and taking a very seriously scientific approach, but also full of humanness and compassion in how they produce products and services. There's a lot to be learned from them and with them, and that we're excited about what that looks like. And of course, there's quite a few other organizations that I need to look at notes I've listed in our initial proposal. I think are doing great work. Let me find that. We can probably edit this part out. Yes, we're also excited about Building H. They also actually had some success in specifically on the well-being metrics piece and evaluating companies based on well-being metric. We're also really excited about the Meaning Alignment Foundation. And the Happier Life Institute. Yeah, there's also the Institute for Advanced Consciousness Studies that's behind the Compassion 2.0 folks. So there's a lot of organizations are popping up and solving this in different ways, whether through research or creation or political advocacy. And we're excited about figuring out how to collaborate. And what we're really good at doing are supporting innovators to have open exploration as much as possible and supporting them through that creation from idea to creation phase. And we definitely want to lean into doing more of that through either incubation, a more intentional incubation fellowship program where we can create more space for folks to do that, or, continue on with our, we have a weekly support group on Thursdays to support folks through the process and one-on-ones almost every day to work with different teams. A lot of this is organic work when you're starting a new organization. But yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of good answers there. Thank you so much. Another thing that you mentioned, I know that a lot of people were curious about it in your proposal was this idea of a flourishing certification. Is that something that you'd be able to just explain a bit what the idea was and how you think, if that's something that you're still curious about doing, what you think you would need to do basically to make it happen?
Yeah, totally. I think that's the research piece that we're in the very middle of it. I'm sure our answers will be more elegant in a few months. We're basically trying to look at replacing singular success metric, product success metrics such as engagement with more holistic metric, such as, let me just pull up our example. For example, simply how addictive something is versus whether or not it supports you towards moving towards the goals that you want to do. It can be, did it meet my goal of habit formation, healthy habit formation of drinking water today? Did I actually translating what my Oura ring tells me in terms of how many hours I slept towards some behavioral incentive for me to actually go to bed on time or sleep better. So there's a lot of things that we can do in terms of measuring, using existing products that we know to be supporting our wellness and applying what we're experimenting on to iterate towards something that is actually very useful. And this can be applied to our wearable devices. It can be applied to even food. It can be applied to more than just technology things. And I think we can, at the end of the day, what we want to do is get to some kind of label that looks like nutritional label, right? That's a number one example is, okay, great. Does this product help me form better relationships? Does this product help me become more productive? Does this product help me meet my diet and health goals or movement goals? Or does it help me do more rest? And it depends on what dimension the consumer might care about or what they're trying to move towards. We give them labels basically of how well this product actually helped them reach that goal and under what conditions. And that we hope to make it also dynamic. So someone is not just reading the label on the back of a product, but actually can interact with it and see, and their goals might change, right? As if we take a living system perspective or healing perspective, I'm Chinese, thinking about Chinese medicine, like every time you go see a Chinese doctor, as your body heals, you're getting a different prescription, right? So we're hoping to take that kind of dynamic view on how we label products. So I hesitate to say one label and then be all, but it's more dynamic. And that we hope to start with product and service makers. So we have design principles when we make things in the human-centered design world, but those are usually fairly static. How do we translate those design principles into dynamic ways that we can make, let's say, next generation of wearables or neurotech devices that can help people rest better, focus better, or remind them to go outside, whatever their goal might be, help them dynamically meet them. And also we want to make sure that the certification doesn't just come from a panel of experts, right? We've seen enough of that in the past, everything from DSM to others, but also incorporate how people's lived experience is with the product. For example, during the workshop, we had a quick prototype to show people's opinion on Reddit of comparing AI girlfriend to AI therapist, which one supported them to feel better. And a lot of people said the AI therapist made them feel better. I'm not necessarily endorsing AI girlfriend or AI therapist, but the idea here is we want to put power back into people's hands and consumers' hands where they can help determine which products actually help them meet their goals and be better and thriving. And we all have that embodied knowledge. Right now, there's not a clear channel for that to go back to device makers, and except through user research teams that are, of course, biased and hired by the company. And I've been on those teams myself. So we want to create that channel of feedback as well. So those are the early thoughts on how we can manifest and actually operationalize and all the great wellness research into something that can be used by product makers and consumers day to day. And hopefully that also have some implications and also have some can play informative role in policymakers as they think about how to regulate consumer products towards behavioral and social emotional health. Does that answer your question?
Totally, yeah. I think I love all the specific examples of how technology can actually be helpful. I think that really helps paint a picture of more an existential hope future, I guess, with technology, rather than I feel like a lot of people have quite a negative connotation to technology these days, I feel like. And so this is very positive to hear.
We want to change that. Yeah, I want to just add to that by saying sometimes I get into these talks and it's harder to be specific, but I think that, that can go on for hours, but I think the parts I really care about, for example, specifically when it comes to like spatial computing and wearables and neurotech and all these like powerful things that are being powered by AI nowadays, I'm an optimistic skeptic, right? I think that, of course, the term like techno-optimism has been somewhat claimed. That's semantic real estate, but I do want to say that we are definitely techno-optimists, but with a very humanly skeptical bent. Because I personally don't want a future where we are wearing our AR goggles everywhere, right? That's like fairly dystopian and creates more disconnection. And it's not necessarily healthy for our bodies, even for our neck itself, right? And let alone social and emotional well-being. And we like Ready Player One future. We don't have to do that, right? Spatial computing can take a very different route instead of concrete devices on your face, which our companies have every incentive to create them because you can sell discrete pieces of hardware and we know how to price them, we know how to produce them. That doesn't have to be the future. A very possible future is ambient computing, ubiquitous computing future where technology fades into the background, right? Google Tiny Things is a great example where a lot of the interactions are very soft, very in the background, very ambient. And that really does help us as humans live a more integrated and calmer life. We need our nervous system to be calm and integrated and centered for us to be well. And that's a very baseline kind of truth. Because as much as our society is running ahead, this thing right here, the brain as hardware, haven't updated in a long time. Right. So we keep loading newer versions of software onto it. That really stresses out. And that leads us to anxiety, depression, all the things that we're experiencing today. And we definitely want to advocate for a future where we can look at something different, like ambient computing, like embodied interface that is not transhumanist necessarily, that's not becoming cyborgs, but helping us move from all the great success of quantified self, right? Where we're wearing rings, we're wearing watches, we're wearing earbuds or even headsets. That's giving us a lot of data, move from that towards something that actually supports us and not just looking at a dashboard, right? It translates into behavioral changes we can live by and incentivize into doing that. So all of the things are really excited about. And AI doesn't have to replace humans as girlfriends or therapists. It can play a really critical role in coordinating a family and connecting with each other. So those are subtle but big differences between where our current system is going and where we could be going that's supportive of humans. So we want to create the support structure for this path to happen. And it's not trivial work, right? Deploying all these powerful technology into existing incentives, we're going to get more of the same and worse. So that's something that we feel a lot of urgency about. And we really want to push for change. And we know the answers. We have human-centered design tools, we have systemic thinking tools, and we have our embodied wisdom to help us. So we're not necessarily inventing something new. We're just advocating, saying, double down on the human path and see what happens. That was a lot. I think it's important to get that out there.
Yeah. So the main focus of the hackathon was transformative AI, also on how we can both reap the benefits of it, but also navigate sort of the risks of it. And so I'd be very curious to hear about your thoughts on how do you think AI can actually contribute to being like we've talked about technology in general, but maybe AI would be interesting. And then also the biggest risks or obstacles that you see in having sort of an AI-driven future, but optimally one that enhances well-being.
Yeah, totally. I want to preface by saying that I'm not an AI risk researcher, alignment researcher in the traditional sense, and I respect people in the field and very much in the learning phase of all that in terms of all the possible risks AI could pose to us. But what I do know as a neuroscientist and as someone who studies human wellness and as a human-centered designer and system thinker is that there is a path forward for AI and humans to really support each other, right? That's the path we really want to take. So the positive future path. And that's not to negate at all the risk mitigation work that needs to be done, autonomous weapons, everything. That's something I don't know how to address. But I think there is a future where AI can do the things that we're not so good at doing as humans to liberate us to be more human, right? We've seen this throughout history. We've seen, I like the saying that for every problem that we didn't have machines for, we have used humans. So this has been true since slavery, since women being more taking a at-home domestic role until dishwashers came along, right? We've seen this happen over and over in history where a new wave of technology have liberated humans to be more humans. So I think that's a path that AI can put us on as well. And from a scientific perspective, I'm so excited about AI's ability to generate and handle large data sets. And for example, we don't know enough about the brain, right? We've done a lot of research, but a lot of that is actually an engineering problem, a technical hang up. And I've experienced this in grad school where we routinely wrote papers, a sample size of 8 to 12 people, because that's all we can get in terms of from imaging studies. And that is not enough. Right now, if we have AI plus these like consumer neurotech headsets that are used for good purposes, such as ADHD or other things, we can really unlock human cognition, understanding of human brain processes in a whole new way. I'm super excited about that. AI can do that for us and can use that data to help us be more have more insight into how our brain works, what our current emotional state is, and better understand our bodies and have our bodies speak to us and to each other in a way that's really healthy and supports well-being. So that is one example where I'm excited about. And number two, AI is really great at things like precision, accuracy, and carry out repetitive tasks that humans might not be very good at. And really being that co-pilot in creation, right? A lot of AI products today are leaning that direction after generative AI became more popular. It generates ideas. It doesn't replace human creativity, but it really jumpstart that creativity process. So as designers, as creators, we're not staring at a blank page of paper, but we're getting those ideas and we're able to go from there and really up level how we create. Everything from a user experience to a built environment like a house, a building, to social systems and more. There's so much potential in that. I think those two things are examples that come to mind. And also in terms of helping us have healing. For example, Thyself is in our ecosystem. They really help. Is AI, how do I describe them? They're more like a AI-based system that help you work through. You use IFS framework, for example, and somatic inquiry to help you work through emotional blockages, better understand yourself. And that coupled with really good human therapy and relationships and supportive community can move us along in better understanding ourselves. So we can get into alignment, have authentic creation. So there's just so many of those examples, countless examples that I think AI can play that supportive role and collaborative role. And once we start to unlock those potentials through experimenting on them and putting products and services out into the world as social proof, I think that can lower people's anxiety if AI is going to take my job or I don't understand this future, right? Like that can create a virtuous cycle where people are more willing to engage and create these kind of products and services and form a better relationship. So I'm optimistic on that very much. But again, we need the right infrastructure to support these exploration all the way to seeing these things go into the real world. And right now we just don't have enough of that, right? If you're creating an enterprise SaaS company in San Francisco, you're set. There's an infrastructure to support you to do that. But if you want to create an AI-based healing company for yourself or for better social relations, the market doesn't know how to price that. The market doesn't know how to support that. And it doesn't quite fit into the way we conceive what is investable and all of those. So those are all hurdles that we need to overcome in order for all the adjacent possibilities of what could be created with AI to be unlocked and from a human-centric lens. Sorry, that was a little rambly, but there's a lot to say.
Oh, it was good. It was good. Is there anything you would add to it if I broaden the question to not just cover AI? Is there any obstacles that you think are like the biggest obstacles that you would anticipate in creating like a technology-driven future that also enhances well-being?
Yeah, I think this is such a systemic, wicked problem. I think that because fundamentally it comes down to our economic structure at its root, right? I'm not by any means anti-capitalist, but I think the economic system we're in have brought us so much material abundance and all that is so wonderful. But at the same time, at the top, we're trying to ultimately engage in this exercise of create plus value and accumulate capital as the end goal, right? That end goal is actually meaningless to human. It's quite meaningful to capital itself and perhaps to technology. It's quite meaningless to humans and planet. It's not a natural expression of human value. No one wakes up to say, I just want to accumulate more things to accumulate more things. It's always towards some other deeper human need, right? Love and belonging, wellness, and self-actualization. Those are the actual human goals. So that is a fundamental misalignment. That is the thing that we're trying to fix, right? And it feels like a generational task that we're all engaged in is what does this new economic structure look like or no new social system look like? And so many people are trying at this in so many different ways. And we're proposing, let's work within the system and start tweaking it, right? So what I mean by that concretely would be, how do we create products and services that aligns what's valuable to humans to what's priceable in the market? So for example, care work, right? Caring about another human in terms of being a mom or being a nurse and supporting other humans in altruistic, compassionate ways, building community like what we're doing here, are not usually things that the market knows how to price today. But those are clearly valuable human activities. And acts of compassion and kindness are running against this fundamental assumption that we currently have that people are individual utility maximizers. So that's the biggest alignment. These misalignments like run all the way through, up and down. So I think that's the biggest blocker, of course. But how we can start chipping away at this is to start creating safe containers for people to do free creative expression and exploration. Right now, that's a luxury, right? Like we're here in San Francisco and a ton of people are on sabbatical because they have had academic success, they've had their big tech job, they have a financial runway to take time off and realign as humans and find their creative expression and try different things for fun and curiosity. But that is a privilege. That is something that is really need to be a right, ought to be a human right. Our ability to just be human without constantly doing should be a human right. And I think that is what we're trying to unlock is how do we create either through like fellowship program, incubators, communities, and create containers where people feel they can do open exploration without the pressure of shipping a product or meet certain KPIs or capitalist intents, profit intents, and creating more spaces like that, and also taking what's created from there as an expression of authentic value to then feed back into the loop. So what I'm trying to communicate is we're going from this linear kind of extractionary capital on top, dictates what technology gets created and extracts human and planet vitality path into a circular human and planet flourishing, express authentic values, and have technology support that expression and have capital support it, and that kind of virtuous cycle. I think that's the path we're moving towards. And one of the biggest blockers is our mindset, right? It took me a long time to get to what I'm trying to say is if we just start to organize ourselves differently toward that mindset, a lot can change. Our policies can change, our products and services creation intents can change, and our relationship with each other can change, and how we perceive what is valuable. All of that is changeable based on how we organize. So I think, therefore, we think that education systems education and human-centered design education is a very core piece of what we want to work towards. So we can put all what I said into more elegant and detailed ways for us to start working on that. Because the ground truth, right, when we start looking at first principles, the ground truth is that our brains are wired for survival and not abundance. That is a historical fact, and we can move towards a more abundant future. Basically, once our basic needs are met, we don't really know what to do with ourselves. And the meaning of that comes from human relations, come from compassion, from helping other people, from creatively expressing ourselves. Those are associated with social, emotional, and spiritual wellness. And we don't have a lot of things created for that next level up on the Maslow hierarchy. So we're basically at that point of, great, we have baseline needs met. Let's create things that support our next level of needs. And we can get there. And we just need to be intentional about it. I hope that answers your questions a little bit rambly, but I think we're just at a really interesting point in human evolution in developed countries where we are struggling with this, while the rest of the world is also struggling with different things. So making those connections very clear is of course really important, so we can make sure that it's not one group of humans running off solving AI futures, another group is struggling with basic needs being met. And I think this is actually a really interesting topic, because I always like to say I'm less worried about AGI killing us. I'm more worried about society fracturing, right? And we become so different from each other that we can't see eye to eye, and we don't have basic needs met. And we ideally, as a living system of an ecosystem, of an economic system, it's like our body. We can't have the heart being, or the liver being overfed and have fatty liver where our extremities is actually dying. Then we're not a functional organism that can go forward. I think the same way as human species is, how do we make sure that we can keep everything flowing in a virtuous way? Anyway, that's deviating from the question you asked, but I think there are many challenges to solve along the way, and not the least of which is our mindset of how we're approaching this.
I think that opens up for another interesting question, which is just, it would be interesting to hear how you think that this initiative could maybe help lift that other half that I think often forget in conversations about this.
Yeah, I think that's something I feel very deeply about myself, and feel this polarization. Every couple of years, I think about going back to the nonprofit humanitarian world. And one of the initiatives I helped start in the past 2 years, I made a really tough personal decision to stay in San Francisco instead of going to help around that, is in the global humanitarian space of supporting social entrepreneurs around the world that are working on very tough problems like anti-human trafficking in Thailand, and LGBTQ rights, and baseline humanitarian related problems. And that is very near and dear to my heart. And so far, I haven't found a really great way in my own career to reconcile that, kind of like my two split worlds. I would hope in the future we can change that, right? Recently at the UN SDG conference or action weekend in New York, it was very startling. We're halfway to 2030, where we said we're going to meet all these goals, and we're quite behind. And the pandemic have put us even further behind. Some developing countries will have such a hard time catching up. Even just base level education, youth preparedness was a huge topic in terms of how prepared are today's youth for tomorrow's jobs and baseline survival. And the numbers, I don't remember exactly right now, they don't look that good, right? We have a lot of folks that are not prepared in the global south, for example, for jobs that might be overtaken by AI. And we have folks we're talking about a 4-year kind of gap in terms of when technology happens here in San Francisco and when it gets taught and understood somewhere else in the world, in high schools or in college. So that gap is so real. I think personally what we could do through entities such as the Flourishing Foundation or whatever this initiative shape up to be is through education, right? We could close that information gap. We can close that support gap as well. And when you look at this model venture studios around the world, the most successful ones are not in the US or in Europe, are in Europe sometimes, but they're all in places where the innovation ecosystem is not as abundantly resourced, right? So you have groups that can support you. Say if you're a lone innovator in somewhere that have no access to resources, going through an entity like that can really help them make the difference between taking on a traditional path or to start a venture or start a innovation project that really can change things locally. So we want to, down the road, be able to do that more, either through building communities more locally, replicating communities that we have here, or providing support for folks. And right now it's happening. For example, a couple of founders that have found us and said, well, I really found my people because they were pretty alone in their ecosystem. And this specific to neurotech folks that have come to us recently and said, hey, coming here was really what made me feel confident about continuing on with my project. We want to make sure that same effect can happen elsewhere in the world. And sometimes that might not be enough, right? Sometimes being even aware of the problem is not solving the problem. So I think this is going to be an ongoing exploration on how we can do better. And also, I have grown up between Asia and the United States and fully aware that one culture is not in a position to lecture another culture of how to live better lives. There's so much wisdom to be learned across. And I've always found myself in positions of bridging gaps and bringing together knowledge and wisdom and be a facilitator for people that can share that knowledge and wisdom. And sometimes that itself is enough. Building those bridges of like compassion and co-learning and collaboration can go a long way. So I'm also very hopeful about, for example, this collaboration with Thailand and Shenzhen, and be part of giving back in a way across the Pacific to where I came from, and collaborating with local designers and scientists and educators there to bring what we're learning here in exchange way with them. Yeah, I hope that answered your question. It's something that's always on my mind too.
Yeah, thank you so much for expanding on it. It's a very tough one. If we imagine you look forward and things have gone well with the Flourishing Foundation, where do you see this being in 5 to 10 years? What do you see your guys doing, hopefully?
Yeah, I have a personal answer for that. And I think there's also what the entity wants to be itself. And as creators, we give birth to things and they take on a life of their own, and we need to be open to that. I would love to continue to do the three things I mentioned. One is run experiments, open exploration, be fully supported in doing true open exploration experimentation on these topics. So doing translational research really well, be in company with people that do that, and continue to incubate products and services that go out into the real world and make an impact. And also continue the community building aspect of just creating this basin of attraction where people get to do this type of work and have a more built out infrastructure. So we could become, I'm trying to stay away from defining what the thing might be, but it could be like an innovation lab, could be a venture studio, could be a network of innovation labs and venture studios, and could be a focused research organization like Convergent, where we have different companies underneath it that are doing very exciting things. We could look like the MIT Media Lab, right, where multiple groups are part of that. And that vision is coming true here in San Francisco, thanks to Studio 45 and Nate. There's few groups moving into that building, like all have a different bent on biology or neuroscience and elsewhere. So I think some kind of like research plus product incubation entity could be really cool. And I would hope that we have also contributed a big chunk into normalizing the culture of creating AI and transformative tech in general to support human flourishing. And we played a huge role in building that culture, which is not trivial. And yeah, personally, I would just love to keep building things, like just work with cool people, create things that are good for humans, and not have to wrestle with the system to negotiate that on a continuous basis. I think it would also be really awesome if something like the Flourishing Foundation can have more role in, I'm wrestling with a few things. I think, yeah, in terms of, I'm thinking concretely, translational research and product incubation, but also have a really good kind of education arm, which continue to produce knowledge. I'm thinking back at my experience at Cooper and Design It, where they trained a generation of experienced designers and really created a field around human-centered design. along with the rest, everything from D-School to Ideal and all that. Like that generation of human-centric designers really pioneered this field and built it into a field. I would really like conscious tech or flourishing tech, and whatever we want to call this, to be built into a field and ecosystem where we say, of course, technology should be humane. Of course, technology should be consciously made. And of course, it should support us. And all the things that we think we know, of course, as humans are not the norm today. And yeah, I think that kind of field building, I would like 10, 20 years from now, oh, of course, the last generation people thought that was totally revolutionary, but we take it for granted today. Like women can vote or things like that, where we become totally relevant. And all the thoughts that might be radical today become of course. That's the future I want to see. I hope that's not too abstract, but I think that's where we're going.
No, that's great to hear. Yeah, I think that sounds like it would be an amazing future. And I like the analogy to like thinking about these things that we really take for granted today. That was just plain illegal not too long ago.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's actually, yeah, or like, yeah, totally. Like gay marriage, women's rights, like all the things that are like, or end of slavery and all the things like, oh yeah, how was it ever there? Like, how do we ever think that GDP or engagement was the best measure of success for our technology? Or how do we ever think that AI should replace humans? And yeah, I hope it's one of those like, ooh, in our teenage days, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it sounds like this could be a potentially amazing future and one I'd be personally excited to live in. I think we're nearing the end of this interview, but I just want to ask you, my last question is, what advice would you give to someone who wants to contribute to a future where technology supports human and planetary well-being? And also just how can people engage with the work that you're doing?
Yeah, gosh, I think I wouldn't say advice. We're all learning through this together. And I think it's messy, right? Human problems messy. We can be so elegant about all the theories and the ways we talk about meaning making. We talk about wellness research, and we can nicely package all of these things into like papers and data sets and all that. But at the end of the day, it's doing that day to day, right? It could mean, so I think my advice is really getting hands-on. We started running as a community, just 5 people got together and we started talking about ideas and airing our concerns about what we're currently working on and imagining positive futures and organizing built days and taking very grassroots bottoms up approach. I would say if you feel so inspired where you are, start a group, start finding a few folks that are interested in similar things, start making things together, right? Starting finding support for that, starting to form your own thesis on how you can make impact based on the unique background that you might have. I'm coming from my set of backgrounds like economics, biology, design, like that's the impact I can make. There might be many different paths towards that. So start your group and finding other people that are like-minded. So you're not thinking and reading by yourself, but actually starting to take action. I think that's number one advice I would give. And yeah, so start taking action. And number two, I think, and there's no action that's too small. Right. And I think number two, in terms of how to engage with us, we're a very open invite community. If you want to speak with us, we have weekly folks that are speaking to us almost weekly. So we're happy to schedule you in for Tuesday. If you want to speak and engage with the group, we can do this virtually as well. If you're in San Francisco, fantastic. Drop by the Commons on Tuesday night. We're always there at 7 p.m. It's a very openly low barrier to entry kind of engagement community. And number two is you can join our WhatsApp group and stay tuned there. Number three is we have a Thursday product maker support group. If you're working on something actively, you don't have community that think the same way, you want support. We are here for support. We're talking through everyone's projects, piecing together our resources to make them work. So either Tuesday or Thursday, join us. And we're also working towards the next build day / unconference. We've had 2 so far. Wellness and AI last June, Conscious Tech Build Day December. The next one coming up is probably going to be more neurotech focused. We'll see, but there's another one coming up late summer and fall. We're trying to organize. Just jump in and help us or be part of it in the movement building piece. Yeah, and I think those are some of the things that we've been running all of this with very little resources. We love support. I think we're going into a phase where we need to look for more financial resource specifically because we're abundant in a bunch of other things except that. So support us there if you want to and can. And if you are already running a community, and want to link up with other communities that are like us and conscious tech or behavioral tech or complex and coffee, you just want to be part of this ecosystem, then you're welcome to join us. And we have a kind of like community leaders support group that's being formed right now. So we can trade resources, do projects together. Yeah, so all of those are ways to engage. And we are very open to see how things evolve as an organization with these basic shared values.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this work. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Ming, thank you.
Thank you so much for interviewing me, and so excited to share progress in the future. And very grateful for Foresight and Future of Life for having hosted the event, the XHope workshop in February, because that really helped us kind of unlock and jumpstart a lot of things that we've been wanting to do. And it's been incredible just being able to lean into this work with more intention and feeling we're supported too, and feeling that there are other like-minded folks out there that we want to create positive futures together. And thank you. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's, I guess, the purpose of a hackathon, to actually make sure that we're jumpstarting or catalyzing a lot of progress to happen. So yeah, very happy to hear that.
Amazing.